There we go. Okay.
Heard you now. Good, man.
Okay, we're good.
I was gonna say, wow.
So we'll call meeting order at 4:02, 4:03, whatever it is. 4:02, okay. Thank you. Roll call, Heather,
Present.
Chris Chang,
Present.
Rita,
Present.
Steve Hurt. Steve Kerr,
Here.
Patrick,
Present.
Thomas,
Here.
Roy, present, Liz,
Here, present.
John,
Present.
okay. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
I would support.
Any additions or changes? All's in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. All right, time for public comment. This time there's no one in the township hall for public comment. Is there anyone on Zoom, Chris, that is raising their hand? 3 minutes to speak.
Second, nobody's raising their hand yet. No hands raised.
Okay, so we'll move on from there. Approval of minutes, item E, March 13th minutes. They were in the packet, right? Yes.
Yes, they were attached.
Yes, I saw them earlier. Is there a motion to move minutes?
I wasn't here.
Okay,
Oh, I'll make the motion. It's
Okay.
good to me. And I'll support.
any changes or things to the minutes? Anyone wants to? Everything look good? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. That's for the March 13th minutes. Okay, on item F, reports, parks. Chris, can you give a little bit of update on parks since obviously Anna's no longer. with us?
Yes, I can give you a little bit of an update. We posted 2 steward positions. The deadline was, I think, just in the past week. We have been going through interviews and we are hoping that we'll have somebody on board within the month. As far as the parks director job, that is still open. We haven't conducted interviews yet, but for those who are watching or interested, please, it is on the Scio website. You can apply still. So that's the status of the positions that are open.
Okay,
Have we had applications for the parks?
Yes. Yes, we have. How many? I don't know. The HR has not disclosed that, but I do know we've had applications.
but that one's still open, basically.
Yes, that one's open. The director job is still kind
And the stewards, you think are closed?
yes, the,
It's not, the 12th, they decided.
they extended it,
Till the 12th.
the deadline? Okay, the deadline may have been extended. So today's what, the 10th? So we've got
Right.
2 more days. We have conducted a couple of interviews.
Anyone who's listening, you have 2 more days.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, that's helpful. How about any news? I guess we'll go through it up here later. Any other park news?
I have been in contact with, the contractor out there at Van Curler.
Mhm.
I haven't driven by in probably the last week or 2 weeks, so they were actively, working and, grading the site. So I'm hoping it's getting closer and closer. If I go out and take a look. So that parking lot's getting closer.
So I drove by the other
Oh,
day
thank you.
and the parking lot, at one point you could just pull in. And now they have excavated at least a foot drop and they're very busy working. I meant to go by today and I just didn't fit it in. So, but they're actively working. What I would have liked to see were the cones so that you did not pull in. Because if you pulled in, that would be a problem when it was dropped. And when I was gonna go by today, I was gonna move those cones so that you don't just pull in there.
Yeah, I did stop by, probably 2 weeks ago. One, concern- I mean, they're certainly graded out, making it look like a parking lot. Some of the trees, we put a fair amount of fill around. So I'm concerned that, we kept them. It's one of those things, it's good to save them, but then when you put a fair amount of fill around certain trees, it has a tendency to kill them.
Sorry, what do you mean, Phil?
Well, let's say the ground was here and the parking lot's up here, so now we put fill like around this side of that tree.
Oh,
So the tree they can't breathe, so they suffocate the roots, and then, in certain trees, it's more of an impact than other trees. I didn't really pay attention to what type of trees they were, but something, I guess if they die, we'll have.
Even mulching?
Well, they're not mulch, it's dirt, because the grade, because we had to make a level parking lot, so the grade to make a level parking lot, because obviously it drops off going away from the road, so to make that level, we had to bring that up and put it fill around. So initially, you didn't have to take down the tree to actually put the parking lot, but then the fill material may, I mean, I guess the best thing is you just, at this point, let it go, and hopefully the tree survives. If not, you may.
They had post, things around them marked like, street fence or something, it's some way to make it so that they didn't do that, because when I walked it with Eric and Anna, we talked about that a little bit. But we also talked about some of the trees that he took out, and I said, oh, I would like to have this wood, at least the straight pieces for our nature play spaces that we want to do.
We know where those are.
No, I said you could either leave them here or you can put them somewhere and let us know. And I think you can follow up with Eric and we talked to him. Anna was trying to do it too.
Can you not just drop them off in that area right over
But
there?
they're
The
big,
log.
Oh. Wow.
but yeah, if I think he's
Right.
removed them from the site from what I could tell. I
Oh.
didn't see them. But I don't know where they are. So
Oh, I'll follow up with the contractor.
they were beautiful.
And some were
Right.
walnut, which is actually a good wood for natural play spaces.
Yeah.
That last longer than.
Yeah,
A soft wood will, you want, there are certain woods that you want to use, walnut,
I mean, if anybody's got the capability to move around something like that, it would be this guy.
a
right?
tree, a tree.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
you know, hey,
But-
buddy, right over
The
there.
problem is he restores wood too and uses it, so there's, like that, cause he might. But it's
Well, I
our
remember
wood,
we
it's
let
on
him
our
know
part.
early on that.
So
yeah,
we
it's the
did let him
law,
know
So,
before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
so,
okay.
Another quick question then, Roy. If they're putting fill around those trees, is it compacted or is it something that like with erosion, it may just, it'll take that fill and take it down the slope? You know how?
Well, so let's say the parking lot's up here and the tree's down here, they're sloping it
Exactly.
down. And it'll get stabilized, but just by putting that fill around half the root system, it cuts off the air and that will, some trees it affects also other trees. So how close it is,
Is that something that when you're getting a bid on a parking lot and you say, okay, I've tagged all these trees that have to come down. Well, oh yeah, I forgot, slope and dirt is gonna kill 7 more. I didn't think it,
That happened.
shouldn't they think of that?
that did happen, because we had so many trees marked, and then, that changed because of that.
Yeah.
Because they said, what's gonna happen is these trees are not gonna survive, so they just took them away. So some of them,
But in order for us to make a decision ahead of time, it'd be nice to know what's gonna be affected by slope as well, I guess, and what other, I don't know. I don't do this, so I don't.
yeah, I mean, generally you'll have the footprint of the parking lot. Let's say the parking lot is, this, whatever it is, 50 by 20 feet, or whatever the number is. Then there's what we call a grading limit outside of that. And is that grading limit another 10 feet, 20 feet? And that's where, the parking lot doesn't impact that tree, but the grading for that. And obviously if it's a level site, then you could grade 2 feet beyond the parking lot. If you're raising something up or cutting something down, then that grading is gonna go back further.
But would you say that the contractor should have known that ahead of time and said in their proposal, we've tagged 22 trees that have to come out and there's a risk that these 7 or whatever could be lost because of that? 'Cause
Yeah, I mean, that would have been in the engineering drawings, yes. And like I said, sometimes you'd say, okay, they're marginal, so let's try to save them now. And, roll the dice and take your chances.
Mhm.
and that did
At
happen,
least know that there's a chance that they're at risk.
Right.
Okay.
it did happen.
Sounds like,
you can't pull into the parking lot.
You couldn't the other day when I was there. Now, a few weeks prior to that, you could. But then now that I think because they have to probably do this in such a way so that, it stays where you put it, so it doesn't wash away. So that's my thought anyway.
when I pulled off the road, I did not pull in. Because it should steer again. When I was there, it's like, don't pull in or you might not get out.
But I could pull in one day and it was fantastic. It was just the evening, so I knew that no one was gonna be working. It was great. It was a good feeling to feel.
It's making progress, sounds like, so that's good news.
There's people using it.
People
I
use
was
it.
there on Sunday, I was surprised, had my dogs with me. And I feel like I'm VIP, you know, because I'm parks, right? So my dogs and I are cruising along and then all of a sudden, yeah, like there was a couple with a big German Shepherd out. That we were all three of us were like, oh my God, like we were.
There's someone else.
Yeah, and then, yeah, there was another couple out, like towards, the end of we did a couple of laps and so I was like, okay, like, that's cool, word's getting out.
People are
People are-
finding it.
Yeah, and I was curious where I guess I should have asked them, I didn't think about it, where they were parking, because,
When you come in.
and where'd you come in at, right? Cause I came in off the, entrance on Huron River Drive. But there was no other cars, so I don't know where they were, and I did peek over into the parking lot and. I mean, you have to have a pretty decent vehicle to navigate that right now, so. I don't know, maybe if they
Unless you live local, they.
live local, yeah,
Yeah.
I knew that it was,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a magical space, it's
Mhm.
really cool there, so I get why people are kind of jumping at the bit to check it out, but.
Sure.
Okay. Planning, this is township, anything on planning?
They're looking at the bylaws. I think I shared last time that, we're gonna need to update our solar ordinance and wind ordinance. I think that was in last month's report, given the changes in the state law. On Monday night, they talked about changes to the bylaws, which aren't finalized yet, but they also approved the recommendation of a conditional use permit for University Flower Shop, which is located in Nichols Arcade, in State and Maynard there. But they have a facility in Scio Township. They want to have a facility there that they're going to allow. And it seems silly that you have to do it. We had to give them permission. Well, it'll be up to the board to allow them to use up to 10% to sell flowers, so to allow retail, and it'll be on Wagner Road. So kind of like, where the Francois and the Gelman and all, Jackson Plaza. So, so that was recommended to go to the board for approval. That's all I have for our planning commission. And they also, there has been meetings with the Jackson Road Overlay District or with the J-Rod, kind of like re-envisioning how Jackson Road looks and, how do we make it better than it is? So there's a committee that's looking into that. I don't know if you attend those meetings or not, Chris. Okay. So that's it for planning.
Okay. Is anything?
Land preservation, I would just say, we have one, property that we voted on, recommended to the board. I don't think the board has acted on that yet. And then we have several in the pipeline that we are, in various stages of cultivation, talking with, that they've applied and, we're trying to work out details.
Mhm.
And on the, who was working on it too, on the website, they have like this flow chart.
Oh, very good.
Like somebody says, hey, should I sell my land to the township or should I give them an easement and all the process or they
Yeah.
take? And if yes, then no, and it kind of goes around the process that it takes with respect to the due diligence and all that. So it can be a month long, sometimes it's a year long if there's this
Sometimes
parcel.
more than that. If you go on the LPC webpage,
Yep.
John's right, we've got a new flow chart up there and it's kind of sets it all out, how things work, so it's
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, you can see how long some things can take, and sometimes
Yeah.
the square that takes the longest is family decides that they are going to sell the family farm, and that's often the.
Or sometimes 4 of 5 children.
Yeah.
decide that they're gonna sell the family, so it could be like that too.
Okay.
And there's a meeting tomorrow.
Yes,
4 o'clock.
we have a board meeting tomorrow.
Roads, I didn't miss the last meeting. We're still working on a special assessment district policy. And we're talking about something happening, road funding in 2025. Board of Trustees.
I have a written report. I can save time you can cherry pick and ask questions from it or look at it. Highlights to point out, is that, the Goodrich Theater is no longer gonna be a theater, which should come as a surprise to no one since it hasn't been theater for several years. But they're gonna, allow, that's a public plan unit development, PUD, and because of plan unit development is an ordinance that required an ordinance change in public hearings and some discussion, negotiation. between what should the uses be. And, you know, it could potentially be a 5-story or 6 if they allow affordable housing story development on that parcel, which is,
It's a good location.
which is a different look for Scio and a different look for Jackson Road.
Next to the Tesla dealership.
Yeah, you get a good look down on all the car dealerships.
But on a bus route, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no.
But,
Just outside the city, it limits, I mean,
but,
by
but,
4
but
miles.
that doesn't mean it's going to be housing. Because other uses are allowed too, office, technology, research, entertainment / indoor. Could be a mixed unit with some retail or some grocery, medical office. And then only 1 or 2 restaurants or bars with a pretty limited seating. 70 if there's 1, or 2 at 40 apiece, which is kind of boutique, you know what I mean? But that's because there was a restaurant up in front, Carlisle, that spent a lot of money going in there based on kind of the representation, the expectation that it was gonna be a movie behind them. And then all of a sudden, it's not a movie, it's the bar that competes with them. You know, so that's kind of what some of the board's thinking was to allow restaurants and bars, but on a much smaller scale than what they had. So we don't know what's gonna go in there. Another thing that the board did is, fire millage, it's a 10-year fire millage. The last one is this fall, and then we have to do something about it, either let it lapse or, you know, restore and renew the millage, which the board heard from a transit committee that, had a couple of planning commission members, had someone from WAVE, had someone from AAATA, Transportation Planner, and they're recommending not to increase the rate, but just to kind of continue it. There's something called Headley, and a Headley override, which means millages sometimes get trimmed just incrementally over years as they have to. The assessor has to do that to comply with the Headley amendment. So what they want to do is they want to restore it just ever so slightly to what it originally was back in 2015. So it's going to be a 10-year renewal of the bus millage that would be voted on in August. And if it goes into effect, it would start in 2025.
Restoration then, right?
So renewing it and restoring it. Restoring it means just taking it to the original bus millage.
That's what the land preservation, the millage.
Yeah, that's, yeah. So it's, it'll go into effect next year. And the thinking, at least my thinking was, let's get this on the August ballot so that the November one is the big one, and that's the fire. What do we gotta do something about fire, probably, the one that went before the voters last year. Too complicated, too much, too whatever, and it got, lost by 2-1. So we need to do something, so let's get the bus millage kind of off our plates and focus on a fire one, which will be a more bigger ask. But isn't much.
Quick question, the WAVE and AAA TA. Too many, but will service be extended past Meyer, or is it gonna stop at Meyer?
Well, they want to do that. Chris, you were Chris.
Yes,
Well, Chris.
yes, they're looking, since we've got development that's out towards Baker Road, that we're looking at connecting with Wave with I think it's I want to say a free type of. Transfer pass, yes, that you could connect then to Meyer and come back in or go back west.
Okay,
On
so
Baker
WAVE would
Road.
pick up Meyer to the west, and then AATA would be still, AATA would stop at Meyer as it does today then?
Yes,
Yeah.
Wave currently provides service, but the proposal under the millage renewal is that the township would have a separate contract with Wave that would bring their level of service, their frequency of service, and the number of stops up to meet and extend the service. So it feels like fixed route service, even though you have to transfer at Meyer.
So South Farms and the new development out of Baker.
Yeah, Woodview Commons, which is, well, there's Woodview Commons, which is just east of Baker and Jackson. There's also gonna be Heritage,
Right.
which is on Baker up the road piece. And there's also gonna be, I wanna say Urban Crossroads Crossings. It's at Wagner and Liberty, which There's a bus that goes from Ann Arbor along Scio Ridge that could detour there, so there's more dense housing. The guy from AATA did kind of, quote a depressing to me statistic, that bus ridership is kind of down, because people are all working from home.
Mhm.
So they ain't got reason to go downtown anymore like they used to.
Right,
So it's coming back up, but they really took a hit
COVID.
during COVID and they're just kind of ramping back up. The only,
Prices are going up.
what's that?
Yeah,
Gas prices are going up, so.
Yeah, well, the other thing is that, we sold the wild, do you want to, did you want to talk about that, Liz? We sold the Wild Fry house at 7970, maybe
Did
it's
it sell?
Fray.
Oh, I
It
didn't.
did sell, it sold for $325. That was $75,000 higher than the second place bidder, and it's gonna be a cash sale, and there are gonna be restrictions on there. You can't split it, you can't develop it, you can't, it is like a conservation easement. So it's gonna have a country look and feel, and it's gonna be, so that was good news.
It is good.
Yeah,
What needs to be done in that house?
and then I pitched an idea, brought it up, it's, it wasn't ready for board action yet, but that's to develop in 2024, if we can, a pilot project for pollinators where people would be allowed to put some hives on township-owned parcels on which it would be appropriate to have beehives. So it is, if it's dense, or if it's near sidewalks or playgrounds, and that might not be appropriate. But if there are some township parcels on which it might be okay to have beehives, and that's something that there will be a resolution in support of trying to develop a project for that. So that wasn't an action item, it was just an idea that was brought forward.
Question, so this house on Liberty was next to Liberty Pond, which is a township park, sort of, right? So does this 325 go to PPP budget? Where does it go? Or should, right? Because it was Parks property, right?
It's Scio, it's township,
Is this the one we got in foreclosure?
Yeah,
Ernie Bates, yeah.
yeah.
I support.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's all part of Liberty, it became a park. And then they split off the house and the farm from the park. I don't know, we should look at the history, but why would it go to the township if it's not, if it's a park asset? Sold, right?
I will
Was
pass.
park money that acquired it.
Yeah, was
Because it wasn't park money, well. it
Was it
township
general,
money,
was it
but-
general fund money that acquired it, or, yeah, so.
We'd be
Well,
happy to
we just-
reimburse the general fund what it costs to buy it.
But did we use money to buy it, or did this township?
There's some
just kind of
disagreement
take
about
it?
that. I found a record that implied that there was some secondary, the larger parcel that is the park, like 50 acres was from a tax default. The farm property was still owned, which was larger than the 5 acres it is now, was subsequent to that larger parcel. And at this point, Spalding Clark was still the supervisor / township manager. And I found some communications where he was working to acquire the farm property because he was worried that the owner, which is still the same person who'd owned the larger parcel before and had done damage to it, would be a bad neighbor for the now township owned parcel, the large parcel. So the township moved to get the farm property, and there may have been some expenditure at that point.
I don't know, it just seems like, or you can put at least towards Liberty Park Pond.
Well, you can make that argument. I don't know how far you.
Well, I know, but I'm just, I mean, because if we actually set aside something, that whole preserve, I mean, that was the whole intent of, where the township we're trying to preserve that whole area from Mr. Bateson's, super topsoil thing, when he was, stripping everything.
There's a lot of debris back there.
The topsoil on the property did that go with the house? Because there was a lot of,
You have to look at the survey to be sure. I think it's really close to the line. When you and I and Parks Advisory Board years ago toured the site, that was more of a threat. Now it's so overgrown that I think it's more stable than it was back then. Back then, when it was just a big, tall, teetering pile of dirt, we were worried about.
Have the tires been removed?
that were there.
Tires are gone.
There's
The
still a lot of
concrete, the
stuff.
broken concrete remains.
Yeah, it's.
I don't know, it just seems like if it came out playing that, you know, for Liberty Pond to do some, plant some trees, do some things, clean things up. Seems like this could be a source of revenue
Yeah,
in my mind,
yeah.
because I mean,
Absolutely.
Make that argument.
it's a windfall, actually, it is a windfall for the township, right?
Sure.
I think people are looking at these kinds of windfalls as potentially ways of moving down the cost of the fire department capital.
I will,
But it's money from
I know, I
open
I
space.
said you can make the argument.
so I will tell Joyce that all but one of the PPP had dollar signs in their eyes when I mentioned the sale of the Liberty Road
Well,
property.
we're just saying, why wouldn't it go back to where it sort of was?
There's a lot of costs that have been associated with the site since it was acquired, so you'd have to deduct all of that.
Expend all those, yeah, any kind of thing, or actually on the sale, could go toward, and it could go to this park, right? Still clean up, because there's still issues out there that haven't been addressed.
That's for
They
sure.
should be, could be addressed, and then it's not gonna happen this year, but it seems like we develop, use some of this money and then set aside of that 325 is 100,000, 200,000, I don't know what the number is. You planned over the next 3 years to do stuff with that at this park, could make it a nice park
Yes.
and it's
Great
great.
idea.
So,
John, is the barn part of that cell? Did it go with the house, the barn?
All of the buildings.
All of the.
So the 5 acre land division that includes the farm property, includes all of the outbuildings. But it moves the prior boundary over so that all of the pond is in the nature preserve.
John, the B proposal, did that come from a board member or did that?
That came from me.
Oh, it came from
It
you?
came from me. I know, like, what the hell are you doing?
I know.
You don't even like honey. No, I was talking with a planning commission member after a meeting, and he was saying how when we had to look at a property on Stabler Road that's in an industrial, he came across that 33 or maybe 32 point something acre parcel of vacant land that's at the dead end of Stabler Road right before the freeway. And he was saying well, that would be a great place to put bees. It's in an industrial zone. People don't walk it. There's not pathways there. It's just kind of sitting there fallow. And I thought, so then I reached out to a Professor Megan Milbrath, who is an entomologist at Michigan State and runs their honeybee keeping, and kind of picked her brain. I know that Scio Township has bees on township parcel. I know that Ipsy does. They're a bee city and have been for some time. But not knowing much about bees, I just came up with a resolution and floated it. And I'm hoping to get input from people who know more about this than I do, which I submit as everyone.
So north of Jackson Road, right? The other.
say what North Jackson.
What I'm proposing is that a pilot project
Yes.
for the township parcels that are appropriate for beehives. It might, just because we have a vacant parcel, I mean, we got vacant parcels right out there. Would that be a good place for a bunch of hives when people are walking by it? Probably not. So you need to look at where could they go? How many should it be? Who gets to do it? What qualifications? Under what terms? All that kind of thing. So it's,
Yeah.
the resolution is meant to be a more general in terms of, the policy would be dictated by the township administrator, by the attorney, and by subject matter experts.
And one thing we have to keep in mind is Mike Levine with his native plant, or he does plants for seeds. And he worries about pollinators that might contaminate his plants. So that's something that was outside, just thought of him just now, but we might want to keep that in mind.
You mean
as
that's where
we
they go?
Consider this, yeah, where
You
the
mean which
bees
part, yeah?
go. And another thing is, like, I can't imagine why at Liberty Nature area, whatever it is, Liberty Pond, could we have flower growers grow flowers out in some of these places, especially out there? That soil is kind of wrecked. Would it help to have flowers, let people grow flowers? You know, real flower, but they could sell some of the flowers.
Is there some relationship between flowers and bees that I don't know about? Yeah.
Well, should we go have a talk?
Yeah. See, listen, maybe, listen. Listen, I got in enough trouble on this.
I think we should, I mean, back
Okay.
to this health revenue, seems like it's something we should look at and
Yeah.
bring back next meeting and see if there is any possibility of some of that money staying at Liberty
And
Pond.
who do we talk to find out what kind of is left over that could flow?
I'll mention that to Joyce. That, the people committee brought, I'm the liaison to the board, and I'll report back that they had an interest in using some of that money. And even though you might be saying all that money, or some of those proceeds.
Proceeds, right,
For
Proceeds,
the
Sure.
adjacent park, to improve the adjacent park out there.
right, because some of that park has not really been restored. It was impacted by Mr. Bateson when he was doing his topsoil thing, and now it'd be nice, to be an opportunity, a funding portion to, and here,
Sure.
even
Yeah.
if that would partner with P3 money, millage money, but we have some money from the house sale. Seems like it just would be, I don't know.
Okay,
That would make a dent.
Yeah.
Really nice.
I'll,
And you can put your bees out there too, that's fine.
I don't have bees. I'm not gonna have bees.
And flowers.
Anything else for John?
No, the capital improvement plan, there's gonna be a special meeting, next Tuesday, and that's the 6-year capital improvement plan, infrastructure, water meter, our generator, our vehicle fleet, and, of note to this committee is, the land improvement benches, Marshall Park, Van Curler, Zebra Road 5, any kind of parks, any kind of pathways. That's a special meeting, the subject of which will be taken up on Tuesday next.
So I do have one other question. I see this, Daughters of American Revolution, a cemetery, historic cemetery in Scio. Poppins Burial Grounds on Pratt Road.
Yeah, it's like the cemetery, nobody knew was there.
Where is it on Pratt Road?
Chris or Will, do you have more specifics on that, Chris?
I don't.
No, it's like an overgrown cemetery that they're trying to find graves and, put up markers and kind of restore it to its.
So near Wagner or out near towards?
Hopkins Burial Grounds.
There's also that burial cemetery on Baker Road, just north of Marshall. That's a township.
I think there's one on Huron River Drive too.
On Huron River Drive, west of Zebra Road,
There's
on
one,
the north
yeah.
side, there's a old cemetery, and there's 1 or 2 grave markers that are visible.
That might be a private one.
There's,
There was a photo, there might be.
there's one on Wildwood too, across from Liberty.
Well, I just see this one, it's sort of like, but yeah, it seems like, not that Parks wants to get into it, I'm just asking. What are these other ones who, I'm sure it's
It
like,
could be a scavenger hunt though, for people that want to go around and find these. I've done that. The school groups.
Okay. all right.
Burial sites.
It talks about Washtenaw County, an old article, 20+ years old, from the Ann Arbor Observer, talking about Washtenaw County being dotted with several small 19th century graveyards.
Yeah.
It describes it, but it doesn't say.
Okay. Learn something new today. All right, place committee. Rita, Liz?
I sent something out to a few people. I think Steve and Liz, and I think I sent it to you and Chris about I had a phone conversation with Dan with, Michigan Recreational Construction. And he sent us an idea book. And so I forwarded that to you guys. Hopefully you got it. And it might give us some ideas. We were talking about, we went to
Yeah.
I want to say Van.
Almendinger.
Almendinger. And we looked at what the city has installed there. The sandbox was, that's really makes a nice impression. It really is a nice, huge sandbox. And then they've got a couple of other attractions that might be nice to give Brandon, our Eagle Scout, some ideas of things that we would like for him to consider doing instead of doing this climbing thing that might end up being a big maintenance problem down the road. What if he did some things that were lower maintenance for us to take care of?
Correct.
So instead of, I know he gave us some ideas last time, what if we give him back some things that we would like for him to pick and choose from that are easier for us to maintain? Just that's.
No, makes, cause he was just sort of grabbing things, and I think, yeah, if we give him, and things that are around here, that things could be done.
Right.
And the other thing I had, that rope thing looks so cool, but I guess liability and legal things could complicate that
That
whole.
looks treacherous.
Yeah.
I mean,
And deterioration too. but
Mhm.
Yeah.
to be
Yeah,
sure
who's gonna
it's
maintain the
safer.
ropes and stuff like that.
And the installation, if you have to use cement, there are some things, just keeping those things maintained over the years. What if we back that up a little bit and look at things that are gonna be easier for us to maintain?
Right, so
That's where we are with that.
Yeah, so
But
go to a couple ones, get some pictures, give them some ideas, like, okay, these 5 or 6 features would call work, you figure out which 2 or 3 would want to do
Well,
here.
we just touched on it briefly in our previous meeting, but that little circle I drew on that map, I think we were talking about when we met out at Almendinger, that there were a couple of things that we really liked. Well, we liked Almendinger, basically, but we thought the quickest things to do, sandbox with the low laying logs. Maybe we could put some stumps in the ground that kids could walk on. We didn't even talk about, there isn't one out there, so we didn't talk much about it, but that stage, that you
yeah.
want to talk about.
We-
If we found even if we had to call it phase 1, then phase 2, if we did the quickest, easiest things that Brandon could get his credit for, get that in and going, and it could be a stage, it could be the sandbox and those low logs. And then leave some extra space for if there's future expansion, or it could just be where little kids who can't quite do
Right.
this run around, and they're all the parents can keep a close eye on everything that's going on there.
Yeah, we
That-
could think about more interactive things. Talking to Ellen Samuels, we could think about
Yeah.
things that are more ADA appropriate, things for touch for children that are, visually impaired. Or just, we can explore other ideas,
Yeah.
things that can
Right.
be engaging.
Mhm.
That would be
Sure.
appropriate for them.
Right. And like you said, out at Eddie, right now we're looking at putting a lot right in this one little area. Like Eddie, they like have some here, then you walk a little bit, you could have some here, and you could walk a little bit, have, and here again, that could be, have something over here, a
Sure.
future phase, have something over there as a future phase, depending on
Mhm.
what type of, so I think that's, oh, we got 5 or 6 features, but let's focus on maybe 2 or 3 in year 1 and then.
Yeah, right.
I just think so,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. The DDA, because we just met with the DDA, they're looking, bringing some money in. They're looking at making this more of an active, that's always been the pros plan, and when Ann was here, being more active versus passive, that being, you can do more recreation. The passive is gonna be like our preserves, where it's more walking, hiking trails, but this is some of the flatter land that we actually have. There's not a whole lot of trees. So more active could be soccer fields, could be things like that. So that's what we're gonna look at, figure out. DDA is gonna look at potentially hiring someone to look at those options, figure out what you could put out there. And then also part of that is when the township hall was expanded, there's 2 bathrooms that were built but not plumbed. Chris is working on getting numbers. How much would it cost to plumb those?
So they'd be accessible.
Accessible, right. So that's something that also we might partner with the DDA on some of the money. So I don't know.
And in the pros plan, you can look at this stuff online, just like what I found in my.
Mhm.
But this is some of the things that are from the pros plan that really show what the results of what people wanted when we did our
Yeah.
ask, what would you like? And so these are there's all kinds of charts and notes, pages and pages of comments that people wrote in there. So we can use these things. This was from 2023, so it's not ancient history.
Right.
So we can refer to that to make some of our.
Excuse me, Chris Chang, can you let Rob Pattinson in the meeting?
I think that's as far as reports.
Can I ask real quick though, just on the bathrooms, in our previous meeting, we were talking about, well, let's see, is it gonna be on? Because there's gotta be, the thought was that there's some connective path. I'd have to walk out there and see, because I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just, what you guys were talking about. Is the connective path to get to the bathrooms, are they not already kind of facing a parking lot where it's already paved to get there? Is that?
That's all pavement, but I think
Oh.
what they're talking about is, should we try to make it look like a sidewalk or some walkway to get there? So maybe after the meeting, if we give you one time, we
I
can walk out
would like
there
to,
and-
yeah, I would, because the thing I wanna make sure is that this great idea of a path doesn't for somehow end up on the wrong side of whatever, and then now it can't be plowed properly or something, you know, and let's make sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I think the first is, the bathrooms are part of the buildings, I think they're there, so we can't really move the bathrooms.
no, I understand,
But it would,
but if we're gonna have an access
Yeah,
path, let's make sure,
which way, yeah, how
Yeah.
it's gonna,
yeah, I'd like to do that.
and hopefully, when you build bathrooms, that was somewhat thought out, I don't know that for a fact, but.
You know, grading for trees and, you know, so that's, anyway.
Okay. F1 information, that we already did that, right, John? So I think we're done with reports. Unfinished business, Van Curler Preserve update. Chris, Bree,
That's good if you could.
right. But I didn't know if you want to introduce it or just jump right in. Welcome back.
Thank you. So yeah, I think you all have a page in your packet. I've been working on like cost estimates for the Van Curler project. And I've come up with seed cost estimates. And so I wrote those all in there. A lot of those were found from websites. One of them is a custom seed mix that was created by emailing. And so that gives you a general idea of that. And then as far as prescribed burns go, I have Dave Boardman in contact emailing, and they're actually working on that cost estimate right now. It's a little difficult for them with all their prescribed burning. They're essentially burning like every nice day. So with these next couple of rain days coming up, we're hoping to have it by Friday. And then the other prescribed burn company, what is it, PlantWise, I actually haven't been able to contact them. So I think they're just really busy. I've tried emailing and calling, leaving a message. So I think at the end of this week, if I haven't heard back, I'm gonna reach out to them again. And then the last section, yeah.
So I think on the prescribed burn, we're probably missing this window, right? I mean, they're booked up, I'm guessing, and pretty soon it's gonna be too late to do prescribed burn. And
so-
the other thing is, we really don't have a way to hire someone now, right? I mean, well, we could do a burn in the fall, is that an option?
Yeah, my thought was, don't worry about doing it in the spring. Don't worry about doing a burn this spring, either fall or the following
Well,
spring.
we'll set it up, let's figure out what we wanna do, either set up for this fall or next spring.
Yeah.
And get on their schedule for next year, because those things book up and their window's sort of limited, and then once summer's here, it's too late.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, so the goal right now is just to kind of come up with a
Get
cost
numbers
estimate,
together, right,
get an
okay.
idea, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so
And you
hoping to
said there
have,
was research you had to do first, right? Like
Yes.
sort of to analyze what plant life and animals and then insect life.
yep, I was thinking to do that, you know, like this growing season essentially, spring, summer, majority in summer, maybe into fall a little bit. So that's yet to be figured out. So then on that cost estimate sheet, the last section there is like additional contract work. And I wrote a little note in there if I haven't quite finished it or haven't gotten back. But I did find out from, I'm trying to remember what company that was. I think it's written on there. There's a company that would come out and do an initial like on-site consultation, and that would be $300. Essentially, they would come out and gather information, site size, soil type, plant species, all the information along with like our goals. And then after that on-site consultation, they would send a follow-up email, like I think 5 to 10 days afterwards, with like a general plan. And if that's like a project they could take on, different cost estimates for different portions of that. So like invasive species management, different monitoring. So if we wanted to hire them for anything specifically, we could do that as well. but the initial on-site consultation for me would be kind of to get a second opinion on things. Another like professional viewpoint. So that is another option.
Mhm.
And then you can see like there's a few that haven't quite reached back out to me. I've been emailing most of them and calling. So that's kind of what I have so far. And then I think at the back there, I have an example. That's the custom seed mix. Actually, that is their quote and species list that they gave me. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I thought I'd just come and give you all an update.
When you do the seed mixes, are these in the alternative or are they, would you want to, I mean, here, so look at Michigan Wildflower Farm, we have a $7,000 estimate, a $12,000, $10,000. So are those, would they be mixed together or would they be in the alternative? Would be this or that mix?
Oh, you're talking about like each different mix?
Yeah.
I think they could be mixed together. It depends on the company, whether they do a custom mix or not.
But
And
you're just giving this to us for a ballpark for.
just for a ballpark, yep.
Okay, got it.
And so some of those mixes they're like pre-mixed.
Yeah.
And you can see the price varies actually quite a bit on a lot of those. And I was noticing that can depend on like the species number, type of species, and like the diversity. So like the cheaper ones might actually, you might have less species, so it's not as diverse. And you might have more of the common ones versus more of the rare ones. So it kind of depends on like the whole mix.
Yeah, the best thing would probably be to even mark where they are, what mix you put in to see how that worked. You know what I mean, like,
Right.
to monitor.
Or you also have the professional out there and say, okay, looking at all these factors, you're probably best off to go with the short dry land mix versus the dry land mix versus like, no, I don't know, but that's what they do, right?
Yeah, that's what they do. That's their specialty basically.
That would be Michigan Wildflower. Those are the folks that would make those kinds of decisions. That's what you're talking about? Yeah.
That's when you heard from, but, so is it important to have seed mixes that are grown and developed in Michigan, or is Minnesota close enough?
I think as long as they're native to Michigan, in this case, it doesn't matter quite as much. If you're really like getting into it and wanting to have like only Michigan genotype, then maybe you would be more concerned about that. But for our purposes, I think as long as they're native to Michigan and they're from like our area, like Michigan, Minnesota, around here, then I think.
Esther grows them in Portland, right?
What was that?
Esther grows them in Portland, Michigan Wildflower Farm, right? They have, I've
Oh.
been there, they've got huge fields.
Yeah, I think so. Mhm.
Is the
Yeah.
plan to do the burn first and then plant?
Yep, so I think in the person I was contacting from Michigan Wildflower Farm, I was actually asking about some of those. And so if we did have someone come out and do an on-site consultation, they would also make suggestions for that. But from what I've done in the past, my experience like with the DNR, with the metro parks, a lot of times we would burn and then we would plant seed following the burn while the soil is still exposed. Because the fire would essentially clear off all the dead plant material and then we could put seed down after that. And the ideal time, from what I've heard talking to some of these professionals and from my own experience, is that you would want to actually plant seed ideally in like the fall or winter, because some species actually need that cold and the moist and like the freezing over winter to actually germinate. Otherwise, it might just take a full year till they go through that.
One question I had is if you just do the burn and then don't do anything, are you just gonna have burned ground and not have, what's gonna come back? Is there gonna be too many invasives, exotics? Or would it be good or would it be?
If anything, yeah, so if you were to do a prescribed burn, if anything, you would have more natives than not natives. Because the fire would stimulate those native plants.
So the burn helps, but then you wanna help it along by adding more
Yep.
seeds.
Yeah, based on what's out there. So right now out there's basically goldenrod and Queen Anne's lace. And maybe like a couple of pockets of native plants. And so there could actually be some native plants in the seed bank already. The purpose of the seed mix is really to just keep those other plants that we don't want from coming back up. And just to get a more diverse array of native plants. That's more similar to what was historically there. So more of like the native wildflowers, grasses. And so, yeah, we would want to burn and then plant seed after that, just like helps it along.
Tom, it's on Hudson Mills Metro Park as you sort of leave Dexter going out to that big field there.
It's beautiful. no?
Last spring, Metro Parks burned all that.
Okay.
Katie, last name,
Katie Carlisle?
yeah, she used to work at the county park, now she works at Metro Park. They burn all that. And if you went out there like later last summer, and it looked great, because then the
Look, I
blue
was out
stem,
there late
all that
summer.
stuff just, you know, at first it was like, whoa, what happened? But then that stimulates the natives and a lot of times eliminates invasives.
Yeah.
So it's
say that I
amazing,
should-
just by the burn, what it'll do, and then if you add the seed mix in later,
Mhm.
you can actually, you know. So
I didn't
that's,
see it immediately after the burn, but I did see it in late summer and it was memorable because
yeah,
there
I was like, wow, this
a lot
looks,
of really tall
Where was
grass, which
Hudson Mills, the boardwalk trail as it goes up from Dexter, you go across the boardwalk, you go up that little bit about where the power lines are, and it goes out in that big prairie.
Oh, right.
They burnt that whole prairie. And then the natives, the blue stem, a lot of native grasses came back stronger than ever, and
looked great.
yeah, it looked really good, yeah. That's sort of the idea of, you know, Vancouver, how, you know, just doing the burn can really help, and then we add the seeds, what can really turn into it.
So like the seeding is essentially complementing the burn. And then like all the non-native plants are not adapted to fire. And so that's why it knocks back those invasive plants. Yeah, that's a good example.
Do you have, you may have addressed this already the last time you, but how many burns over the years do you suggest? Is it a yearly thing to burn? Is that the best way to do it and just stay on top of it that way and seed always, or just see how it goes?
Right, yeah, so I did kind of have outlined a little bit in that plan I wrote up, but basically for the first like couple years, you could maybe burn like every year for the first couple years or every other year. And seed just like the first time after the first burn. And then like years 3 to 5, you'd kind of watch it and see what native plants come up. Yep, and then after that, typically I think you'd want to burn, what is it, like 3 to 7 years intervals, so it's not really super often. Yeah, you actually probably don't want to burn every single year, because that could start to affect the wildlife and stuff.
You can do partial burns. You're not
Yeah.
doing the
Yeah.
entire-
Alternate.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Okay. How many acres is this site?
6.5 acres.
Once you hear from these other two consultants, you could bring back to us their cost for a consultation and we could talk about what. Go ahead with that part.
Yeah, for sure.
And that would be a good first step. And then you're gonna somehow figure out per hour, an hourly rate for yourself.
Yeah, if that's something that you all want to
I
do.
mean, I'm for that.
Yeah.
I know you put in a lot of time
Absolutely.
and it's valuable to us.
I'm gonna,
Okay.
okay.
We can tell she- do you know, do we have any money? And we don't have to answer that today, but at our next meeting, our money in the budget for this initiative, do you know if this was included? But if we could clarify that for our next meeting, it sounds like there's more budget questions.
Yeah.
And maybe we just get a copy of what the board did approve for P3 budget.
I just looked it up, the budget that was just approved for this current fiscal year just starting, doesn't have a lot of detail in it, in terms of parks, preserves and pathways. So maybe I'm not reading it correctly, but you can find it online. It's on the township's website. There's a link. And just scroll down to whatever the page is where the parks are spelled out, but there's not a lot of project detail, so I don't know if I'm looking at the final work, or it looks like it may be a draft. But
Was there money in Van Curler?
that's the thing, there's not a lot of project specific information. I also looked in the draft capital improvement plan. That budget is actually going to be subject of a special meeting next Tuesday of the Board of Trustees, the capital improvement budget. But that's longer term.
Right.
But you know, just what's there to be spent for these different projects in the current fiscal year is not clear to me from looking at the budget that's on the website. I just looked up exit summary document from Anna And she sent it to Rita and me. I think it was after we had a conversation back in, just as she was on her way out the door. And it does have some details in terms of like Township Hall Park and some of the other projects that could be helpful in sort of picking up the thread, but of course, at that point, the budget wasn't approved, so it doesn't have.
If it's not clear on the website, does that mean there wasn't any money budgeted for parks?
I hesitate to draw conclusions. Like I said, every time I look at the details of the township's budget, I find myself asking questions more than, getting answers. So I would need to go and talk to somebody who is better able to interpret those things than me.
And so, but what's on the website should inform everyone
Yeah.
what the budget is and specifics of it.
I agree.
So, is there a way to get that on the website?
Well, more detail.
Yes.
Yeah, if this is what we've got, obviously it's not enough to really inform what you're doing, what you're recommending, and what the, township needs to do in order to execute these projects. So it's not giving enough information to Chris either. So, if we need to do better than what's there right now in order for people to have some sense of what's, what the potential is for action.
Are you looking at page 56 of 95, the breakdown for Fund 208, Parks and Pathways Fund, estimated revenues and.
That's where it starts on page 56, and then if you scroll down, I mean, maybe you are better at interpreting this than me, but where's the specificity about different parks and preserves? I don't see it.
I remember when we were working with Anna, Reed and I'm not sure who else was the person from Plant Rand. We were going through that and we were setting aside, the plan was to set aside money for some of these different parks. And the question I have with Van Curler is, this parking lot was last year's budget. So whatever that dollar amount was, $100 and some thousand. I'm hoping that just got rolled over because I don't think we didn't pay him that much. But then hopefully we were also talking about putting money in for other things in Van Curler for this year. That was our discussion, obviously, Anna's not here anymore. But that was sort of the intent, but.
Right, that's what sparked this, was that we had leftover money. Remember this conversation, we were going over the budget with her. From the parking lot and from what we had initially budgeted, right, was that we would be able to,
Right.
bring.
There's figures in here for different things, but, how does it break down, into what particular projects? That's not clear to me. So, land improvements, over $600,000.
Well, we can make that work.
Well, I'm guessing that there's more specificity somewhere, but it's not represented here where it would be helpful. There also is the narrative that precedes the spreadsheets on page 53, yeah. And there's a diagram of Township Hall Park accessibility, and it shows the area where we were talking about earlier, where there's a slope that needs to be corrected so that it's more ADA compliant. But there's no text accompanying it to say what the improvements are. So pairing this together with that list of, projects underway and sort of what their status is, gives some idea of sort of where Anna's thinking was as she departed her job as Director of Parks, Preserves and Pathways, but it gives me the sense that somehow the loop wasn't closed. And I will have to look into that.
I think Chris will figure it out. Oh, sure.
And John's really good too.
Even if we had like 10% of the 600,000, that probably works. 60,000, that'll work.
I don't.
Okay, it's a good start. I know that.
I expected to find more specificity.
Yeah. So. Anything else? For Bree? You have anything else? Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for all your work on doing this.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
So I do have a question. What timing are you thinking about? Is that something you start this year? Will you research this year to start in the fall? If you got your way, when would this happen?
Wait, for burning?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
The burn and the seeding and the whole,
Right.
reestablishment of the prairie.
Yeah, for the burn, I'd say either this fall or the following spring, either would work in my mind. If we did it in the fall, then the seeding after would line up more exactly with like the fall and then winter moist and cold. So we'd have quicker native plant germination. But if we burned the following spring, we can still plant after on that exposed soil, but it might take until the next spring for certain species to germinate.
So you ideally burn in the fall, wait, and then get some seed down and then see what happens in the spring.
Yep. Yeah, see what happens. Yeah, we really don't know what actually the burn is going to do because there could be some native plants kind of dormant right now and maybe those will just pop right up. We really don't know.
A lot of it,
Yeah.
when the Native Americans did the burns, a lot of that was done in the fall. I'm not a historian of Native American history, but I was reading in a history book that the term Indian summer, when it got warm in the fall, people thought that was because the Indians are burning the land and it makes it warmer. That was what some people thought. So at least some of the burns historically took place in the fall. I can't speak to how many took place in the spring.
Yeah, it was definitely, I think, varied throughout fall and spring, even some summer too. It's definitely more difficult in the summer because everything's just green, so you don't really get great burn. So that's why fall and spring are the main 2 seasons.
So there's a sense of urgency then, if we want to try to burn this fall, to get on somebody's calendar, and I know you're trying, ASAP, and we still might even miss out, possibly.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know exactly how quickly like the burn schedules fill up. I'm not exactly sure on that. I do know the spring burn season for a lot of the contractors will usually end around like the end of May, beginning of June. But yeah, I think just coming up with a cost estimate and figuring out what their openings are, I think is a good first step as far as burns go.
So
But
should
in
we,
the meantime, we could decide on something, an hourly rate or something that we can pay Maria for this work. I'd really like to see us do that. And the other thing is, once you have enough information, once you think you have enough information, authorize a consultation so that we get a better idea of the cost of the whole thing, so we can go forward incrementally. So we could take those first
so I
two
was gonna ask,
steps.
should we try to come up then with a resolution here to say hourly rate and those kinds, try to put it all together so that we can actually get it going?
I
Because
love that idea, yeah.
yeah.
Unless do you feel as if you should get, I mean, Michigan Wildflower, I've dealt with them too, and they're wonderful. But do you think, would you feel more comfortable having more information or? I mean,
More information as far as like cost estimates go.
these other 2 consultations.
I think I'll hear from, I'm hoping to hear from them like by next week. But like as far as moving forward, I feel comfortable starting to move forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I should be hearing back.
As far as telling someone, we'd like you to come out and do our consult. Are we ready to do that, or do you need to hear from Wild Type and Plant-Wise first?
That would depend on whether we want to see what the options with those other companies are, what their pricing might be and what they have to offer us. So if we want to see what those other options are, we can wait and I can, get an estimate from them and give a general description. Or if we feel good about what Michigan Wildflower Farm has to offer, then we can start with that.
Can I ask them if what we're talking about is waiting to hear back from other vendors that could offer a consultation, that's the difference? So it's either $300 that we already know, or it could be 100 or what, 500,
Yeah, that's
right?
really
So can we agree that $300 is not really anything I want to spend the public's money wisely and I want to get vendor bids, but should we decide that timing is really important and that $300 isn't too much to worry about, or is that?
I agree with that sentiment.
I do too.
Because I think timing is really, we've missed out on so many things because of timing.
Yes.
Let's not miss this,
The only thing I would say though is I'm not sure so to get hire someone for $300, obviously we can't hire anyone.
Right, I know.
So, and I'm not sure, what is our process to hire someone? Here again, I guess, support, we hire agree for some number, whatever that is.
We gotta figure
So
that out.
So that's when, do we, in the next few weeks, then but when we come back next meeting, we'd have a quote from these other people or we don't. And if we do, we'll go with them and then maybe we'll still go with them. And then also, maybe we would, some answers, how would we hire Bree as a consultant?
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of unknowns that,
Yeah, and like how would she would be a township employee and so on.
We need to make
Yeah,
a
or
recommendation to the
contractor,
Board of Trustees,
contractor.
Right.
because they have to check,
Right.
not a check.
Is this parcel something that was procured with LPC money?
Yes, being Carol.
So I mean, it could be this is something, I've got 3 things to talk to Joyce about, the revenue from the sale of the Wild Freight property. Also funding parks projects generally, what autonomy does this body have to recommend? Is there a certain dollar limit, and also compensation for Bree and allocation among whether it's PPP, LPC, whatever, so.
Yeah.
That's kind of my takeaway from this, because I don't want to go out too far over my skis on saying, oh, that's great, let's agree to do it. We also have an HR person, Aurora, she might want to weigh in on that too. So I know we're in the process of hiring, Chris, aren't we, some stewards?
Yes.
So can we put this on our agenda for next week
yeah,
then?
I think that's.
Okay, let's do that.
I think the answer, if you ask some questions,
No, we're not.
that'd be actually a question for LPC, because I mean,
Yeah.
at county parks, when we buy these preserves and do things, there is money in those, in the county's preserves to do the burns, do the, sort of like the maintenance of that preserve. So I'm not sure, is it really a P3 item, or should it be LPC?
Okay, great question.
I
So
don't,
we can, let's talk about
yeah, so yeah, maybe if you can talk about that tomorrow.
that. Or
Split.
share the cost.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, because that, I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm supportive of us doing it, but then if you take a step back, it's like, it is a preserve.
Sure.
And if, I mean, the county, certain money of that is set aside for preserving those preserves or maintaining them, I guess is better.
Yeah,
Maintaining them, and this is, it's
absolutely.
maintaining
It
this.
works toward what we need
Exactly,
to.
the goal
Yeah.
is restore that prairie, and that really, in
Yep,
my mind, could be an LPC, but I'm not sure how the language was written for the LPC.
yeah.
The revenue, maybe it's
Okay.
restricted, you can't use it for maintenance, I don't really know.
We'll,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we could, and then we come back with the answers.
So as long as we're the spark and we don't miss out, I just,
no,
okay,
you're right.
however that goes,
So
let's,
next month.
let's get
we'll
going.
For sure have it on the.
Yeah.
agenda.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Mhm.
All right. Any other new business?
I have a item of new business,
Sure.
basically a question. We were talking about cemeteries. There's several historical abandoned, I'd call them abandoned cemeteries in the township. And does anybody know, does the township own that land? I just went on the GIS map for Washington County, looked at the cemetery on Huron River Drive, west of Z Road, on the north side of Huron River Drive, and it just says owner cemetery.
Well, it is marked on the map though?
It is marked, around it is, there's an investment company, owns a large parcel of land that surrounds it. There's a little square that's carved out, maybe 100 by 100 feet, not sure. And it just says it's owner cemetery. I don't know who owns that. And another question I have, just for thought, is perhaps does this committee have anything to do with that? Is that a park preserve? Or it's not a pathway, but is it a park or a preserve? General questions or consideration.
No, good questions. I like, yeah, that's what I was getting at when this whole thing came up on the one in Pratt Road, because I was aware of the one on Baker Road and one in here in Drive. It's
Right,
like,
when the DAR talks about that, is that any of our business?
Thank you.
yeah, I don't know if that's something, Chris or John, if you can ask someone at the township to find out, yeah, these cemeteries.
I'll put that on my.
Because it's like on a tax, I mean, is there, on tax rolls, should say who the owner is, right? I would think somewhere
Well, the
It's
tax rolls,
so weird. Like you said, it just says cemetery.
with no ownership.
Yeah, sometimes it's like, yeah, like Fido, like somebody's dog, like what, I mean, I see the weirdest stuff on, but cemeteries can be privately owned.
it certainly
you know,
can.
So
Yeah.
maybe
There are certain, I mean,
tacked on to another parcel and,
No, there are cemeteries that are privately owned by nonprofits. There's the whole regulatory system under Michigan law for regulating cemeteries. And I'm familiar with, I've been to cemeteries, that are maintained and, active. This one here on Huron River Drive is simply a wild place with some headstones in it. And according to GIS somehow links in with the assessor's records. There are links actually in the GIS, if you can click on it, say, go to the assessment records. And that's where I think the information comes into the GIS database from the assessor's records. And it just says cemetery value 0, tax 0.
maintained.
It's not maintained.
Here's the deal. Don't we have enough to do with parks, preserves and pathways that we're gonna take on? A tricky part of Michigan law is who owns an abandoned cemetery and what you gotta do with the bodies there. And there's a couple statutes that talk about cemeteries and, do they escheat to the county? Do they come to this? Let's stay in our lane unless we're the extra P, if we can get another P for some kind of cemetery. Yeah, people underground, but, I don't know, I would, if that might be interesting, and we could ask our township attorneys on if there are abandoned cemeteries in Scio Township that we should have a role in. But, I don't know if we wanna dive into that, maybe we do, Kim.
You know who's really interested in that is Lisa Pappas on land preservation. She's at U of M, and she really loves old cemeteries.
John, I'm not gonna stand up.
The thing is, it might be.
Yeah. What you said, it is a question, maybe you don't wanna have anything to do with them.
What was, I guess, go back to this, what was the discussion at the board of trustees? Did they came in, there's a presentation by the Daughters of American Revolution. What did they, just letting people know that?
They basically adopted the Hopkins Cemetery forever as a what's the term for 250 years of not a sesquicentennial, but a centennial or sesquicentennial is 150.
This is a historical cemetery.
They're trying, they have this project, this goal to try and identify and memorialize all of the Revolutionary War veterans. And there's one buried at Hopkins Cemetery. So they have focused on that. And it's also, it seems now a kind of a perpetual Boy Scout, Eagle Scout project to fix up
Okay.
cemeteries.
Maybe we should talk to Daughters of American, or someone should talk to Daughters of American Revolution, trying to get them to spearhead this.
If there's a Revolutionary War, anybody buried in the cemetery on Huron River Drive, then they would probably be interested. Otherwise, I don't know that it falls within their scope. But I think you're right. I think there is a role that the township plays in terms of these old cemeteries. But I'm not sure what it is, but this was a big topic of conversation years ago on the Parks Advisory Board. Partly because Scott Hedberg remains very interested in these old cemeteries, and he was on the Parks Advisory Board, but I agree with John. I think there are other people.
Maybe
who are
stay with
interested in
fees
fixing them
we
up.
got today.
Maybe just aiming an Eagle Scout at that project. That may be all it takes to clean it up.
Fair enough. Any other new business items? Okay, I guess we're on item H, public comment. Still no one here, but has anyone raised their hand? Chris from the public?
Yeah. No hands are raised.
Okay,
Move to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned at 16.
Minutes,
So-